The hour of 6:30 having come and gone, I will call to order the Common Council meeting of Tuesday, October 7th, 2025, and ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Alder Mayor. Here. The mayor is present. Alder O'Brien.
Present.
O'Brien is present. Alder Olhovich. Present. Alder Olhovich is present. Alder Pritchett. Here. Alder Pritchett is present. Alder Tischler.
Yeah, I'm here.
Alder Tischler is present. Alder Revere will skip for right now. Yes. Alder River.
Here.
Alder River is present. Alder Duncan.
Here.
Alder Duncan is present. Alder Evers. Here. Alder Evers is present. Alder Field.
Here.
Alder Field is present. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Here.
Alder Figueroa Cole is present. Alder Glenn.
Here.
Alder Glenn is present. Alder Govindarajan.
Here.
Alder Govindarajan is present. Alder Ugair. Here. Alder Ugair is present. Alder Harrington McKinney.
Present.
Alder Harrington McKinney is present. Alder Legkella.
Here.
Alder Legkella is present. Alder Knox.
Present.
Alder Knox is present. Alder Madison. Alder Madison is present. Alder Martinez Rutherford.
Present.
Alder Martinez Rutherford is present. Alder Matthews.
Here.
Alder Matthews is present. Madam Mayor, we have a quorum.
Alder Revere is
I
present.
apologize. Look on the screen here. Yes, Alder Revere is present as well.
Thank you. All right. As usual, I'll remind us that we're here to do the business of the people of the city of Madison and ask that we do that with kindness and grace and respect, and that in particular, all concerned refrain from using profanity in your remarks this evening. Our first item is an honoring resolution, which I am happy to read, proclaiming October as Pedestrian Safety Month and October 15th, 2025 as White Cane Safety Day in the city of Madison. Whereas on October 6, 1964, the United States Congress designated October 15th of each year as White Cane Safety Day. And whereas in 2020, the United States Department of Transportation's National Highway Traffic Safety Administration designated October of each year as Pedestrian Safety Month. And whereas safe, accessible streets are essential for the well-being of all residents, including children, older adults, and people with disabilities. And whereas thousands of Wisconsinites, including over 100,000 with vision loss, rely on sidewalks, curb ramps, accessible pedestrian signals, white canes, and service animals to navigate public spaces safely. And whereas Wisconsin's white cane law requires that motorists come to a full stop before approaching closer than 10 feet to a pedestrian who is using a white cane or service animal. And whereas greater awareness of the white cane law leads to safer, more attentive driving in general, enhancing the safety of all pedestrians, including children, elders, and people with disabilities. And whereas communities have the opportunity to implement many proven features to enhance the safety of all pedestrians, including sidewalks, accessible pedestrian signals, curb ramps, high visibility crosswalks, traffic calming, and accessible design. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and Common Council do hereby proclaim October as Pedestrian Safety Month and October 15th, 2025 as White Cane Safety Day in the city of Madison, and acknowledge the importance of pedestrian safety year-round. And to accept the proclamation, we have somebody from, I believe, the Wisconsin Council of Blind and Visually Impaired. So we have a written version of the proclamation, which is going to take a picture of us. And then we also have a braille version that we'd like to present you with.
Good evening, Mayor Rhodes Conway, council members, and fellow residents of Madison. My name is Jackson Baker, and I work at the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired. I stand before you today as a dedicated father of three and a Madison resident with a unique perspective. I am legally blind in my left eye, and several members of my family share a genetic condition that causes progressive vision loss. We thank you for this meaningful, honoring resolution recognizing October 15th as White Cane Safety Day and October as Pedestrian Safety Month. It is more than just a date on a calendar. It is a vital commitment to safety and inclusion. Far too long, pedestrian safety has been viewed as a secondary concern, yet it is a fundamental to the dignity and independence of every person in our community. For my family, walking through Madison is a exercise in trust in our infrastructure and trust in our neighbors. That trust is being rewarded by the excellent work already underway by the city. I want to commend the City of Madison for the meaningful steps already taken to make our streets safer for everyone. The Vision Zero initiative is a bold and necessary commitment to reducing the severity and number of traffic-related deaths. It is a promise every life matters. We've seen infrastructure improvements that make a real difference, accessible pedestrian signals that help those of us with vision loss cross safely, enhanced visibility at crosswalks, and growing a sidewalk network that connects more neighborhoods and communities. These are not just upgrades, they are lifelines. But there is still work to be done. We must ensure that all bus stops are accessible, not just some. We must prioritize pedestrian features beyond the downtown core because safety should not depend on your zip code. We must dedicate funding to these projects, supporting our transportation department to further improvements. Safety is not a luxury, it is a right and a shared responsibility. I encourage everyone with questions about the resources available to those who have vision loss, reach out to us at the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired. Thank you again for this recognition and for your commitment to making the City of Madison where everyone, regardless of ability, deserves to walk, roll, and ride. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion. Moved and seconded to adopt. Thank you. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor with thanks to the folks from the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired for their work in our community. Our next item is disclosures and recusals. Are there any disclosures or recusals on tonight's agenda? Alder Harrington McKinney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item number 62, file number 89926. I'd like to recuse myself. My faith community is in partnership with the Monona Grove Nursery School.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Field?
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to disclose that my employer is UW-Madison, so on items 63, 79, and 107, that will not affect my vote on those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. As it relates to agenda item number 78, the potential reconsideration of the sole source contract resolution, I wish to disclose once again that as per my public office, I am a non-voting ex officio member of the Downtown Madison Incorporated Board of Directors, but I will participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Matthews?
I also wanted to report that I am an employee of UW-Madison. So for 63, 75, and 107, that will not impact my decision making.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Tischler?
Same here. I'm also an employee of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, but it will not impact my vote.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Mayer?
I'm also a employee of the University of Wisconsin. So disclose that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Are there any further disclosures or recusals on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on to the presentation of the consent agenda. President Vitiver?
The consent agenda is moved with the recommended action listed for each item on the agenda, except items that have registrants wishing to speak and items that alders have separated out for discussion or debate purposes. This document lists supermajority items, agenda items with recommendations different from the agenda, items for exclusion, items introduced from the floor, and agenda items with corrections. Agenda items that are supermajority items. Item 49, Legislative File 90236, reapproving a certified survey map of property owned by the State Historical Society of Wisconsin, located at 18 to 30 North Carroll Street. 14 votes required. Item 50, Legislative File 90237, reapproving a certified survey map of property owned by Oak House RE LLC, located at 2221 Mustang Way and 5026 Reef Court in District 16. 14 votes required. Item 57, Legislative File 89881, amending the Police Department's operating budget and authorizing the mayor and chief of police or designee to accept a Project Safe Neighborhoods grant award of $8,082 to aid investigations into violent and gun crime. 15 votes required. Agenda items with recommendations different from the agenda. Item 13, Legislative File 89718, creating Section 28.022-00728 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 702 North Midvale Boulevard and 401 North Seago Road from PD Plan Development, General Development to District to PD Specific Implementation Plan District, District 11, and the recommended Plan Commission recommendation is to adopt. Item 14, Legislative File 89916, substitute, amending several sections of Chapter 28 to reduce minimum lot width and lot area within certain zoning districts and to reduce the rear setback for alley-loaded one-story attached garages. Plan Commission recommends to adopt. Item 15, Legislative File 89917, amending various sections of Chapter 28 to update the existing step-down rules for larger buildings when adjacent to a residential district. Plan Commission recommends to adopt. Item 16, Legislative File 89918, amending sections within Chapter 28 to allow detached accessory dwelling units to have 2 units and not be included in maximum permitted use accessory structure size. Plan Commission recommends to adopt. Item 17, Legislative File 90056, amending the conditional use scope of approval. Plan Commission recommends to adopt. Item 69, Legislative File 89481, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Zaire Building Company located at 305 North Francis Street and 533 Conklin Place in District 2. Plan Commission is recommend to adopt with conditions. Item 70, Legislative File 89482, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Madison WT Associates LLC, generally addressed as 53 West Town Mall in District 9. Recommend from Plan Commission to adopt with conditions. Item 71, Legislative File 89766, approving the final plat of Ramish Farm Development on land generally addressed as 4,000 to 4150 Packers Avenue in District 18. Recommend council to adopt with conditions. Item 72, Legislative File 89776, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Four Lakes Properties LLC, City of Madison, and Dayton Orchard LLC, located at 120 to 126 North Orchard Street, 1313 Randall Court, 1314 Randall Court, and 1309 to 1311 West Dayton Street in District 8. This is a recommendation to re-refer, where public comment will be heard when the file returns to council on 10/28. Item 105, Legislative File 90199, authorizing Madison Public Library to submit and, if awarded, accept a grant of up to $2 million from the State of Wisconsin Department of Administration for Imagination Center at Rindale Park construction and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with State of Wisconsin Department of Administration to accept the grant award in District 12. Agenda correction, update referrals to include Board of Park Commissioners with the dates listed. Agenda items that are excluded by request of alders or speakers registered. Item 33, Legislative File 89254, substitute, amending sections 4.095, 10.05, 10.055, 10.08, 10.101, 23.24, and 1.083A, and creating Section 10.105 of the Madison General Ordinances to enhance the city's street tree protection provisions and to establish a street tree replacement fund. We have speakers registered. Item 78, legislative file 89347, authorizing execution of a sole source $150,000 contract with Downtown Madison, Inc. for the preparation of a downtown economic investment strategy in districts 2, 4, 6, 8, and 13. That was for reconsideration. Items introduced from the floor. Legislative file 90270, authorizing the Parks Division to submit and, if awarded, accept a grant of up to $1 million from the State of Wisconsin Department of Administration for park improvements, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to enter into a contract with the State of Wisconsin Department of Administration to accept the grant award. District 15. It will go to Finance Committee on the 13th, Board of Park Commissioners on the 8th, and Common Council back on the 28th. That's tomorrow. Okay. I'm like, Board of Park Commissioners, that's tomorrow. Legislative file number 90288, by title only, authorizing the terms of a land use restriction agreement regarding the redevelopment of the Saxony Apartments located at 305 North Francis Street by Core Spaces. Finance Committee on 1027 and Common Council on 1028.
All right. Are there other items that alders would like to have excluded from the consent agenda at this time? Alder Pritchett?
Yes, item number 70, please.
70?
70, correct.
All right. Are there any other items that alders would like excluded from the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, then just quickly, items 49 and 50 are 14 vote items. Item 57 is a 15 vote item. On items 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, the recommendation is to adopt. On items 69, 71, the recommendation is to adopt with conditions. On 72, the recommendation is to re-refer. And on 105, we have an update to referrals to include the Board of Park Commissioners. We will exclude items 33, 70, and 78. We have two items that are being introduced from the floor. Everybody good? Okay, then a motion on the consent agenda, please. Is there a second? Moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of adoption of the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted. And we will go on then to public comment. We have public comment tonight on item 33. Which is a substitute amending sections of the Madison General Ordinances to enhance the city's street tree protection provision and establish a street tree replacement fund. Our first registrant on item 33 is Sandra Ward of District 4, to be followed by Grace Bankston Hassler, to be followed by Bill Connors. Do we have Sandra?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Rhodes Conway and members of the Common Council. My name is Sandra Ward, and I am the co-chair of Capital Neighborhoods Tree Protection and Planting Committee. I am speaking in support of item 89-254. That item should be supported because climate change is rapidly intensifying, making it critical for all of us to understand that canopy trees are an essential component of our city's infrastructure, not simply an amenity. As we continue to build greater density in Madison, we need also to protect the trees we have. Numerous studies have shown that trees make new developments more valuable and contribute to livable density. We are not in an either-or situation. We can have density and we can save trees, and saving trees is what the proposed ordinance changes will do. The push for greater density in Madison is a threat to the tree canopy, particularly in the downtown Isthmus area. It's common for developers to cut down large trees on private property to make way for the construction of large buildings. That is their right. We can't prevent someone from cutting down a tree on private property, but we can and should protect street trees, the trees that grow in our terraces. Because so many trees on private property are sacrificed for density, every single street tree we have is even more precious. As I look out my window, I can see the march of large apartment buildings replacing what had been backyard trees. In the near future, it could well be that the only remaining canopy trees in many downtown areas will be our street trees. In the past several months, I have seen the destruction or endangerment of trees in our downtown, including on Main Street, Broome Street, Bassett Street, and West Washington. In many cases, a developer agrees to protect a street tree, but then as work ensues, the tree is destroyed or damaged. It is absolutely crystal clear that our current ordinances do not sufficiently protect street trees during construction. The proposed ordinance changes are a crucial step in the right direction in that they bring tree protection up front in the planning process, create effective tree protection zones, and establish a fund to support our tree canopy. I urge your support for these changes. We need this ordinance to ensure the future livability of a denser Madison. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Grace Bankston Hassler of District 4, to be followed by Bill Connors, to be followed by Paul J. Quinn. Do we have Grace?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. The proposed changes to the ordinance for the protection of canopy street trees, agenda number 33, and Legislar 89254 are consistent with the recommendation in the Urban Forestry Task Force report adopted by the city in 2019. The committee stated that trees are the urban backdrop, one might say an essential component, and one of the most basic tools in placemaking. They shape our experience of time and place. The task force report recommends the loss of tree canopy, documents the loss of tree canopy, and the importance of the role of city departments in changing the trajectory towards a healthy urban landscape. The city maps of tree canopy inventory show that the mature tree canopy in Madison's urban landscape does not meet the recommendation of 30 to 40%, especially within the city's actively developing areas. Mature trees provide numerous health and environmental benefits for the city and must be protected for future generations. Our Madison Streets Superintendent Charlie Romine stated in a recent interview that the urban heat island effect is real, and to mitigate the heat island effect, a healthy tree canopy is vital. As a resident of the Isthmus for 18 years, I observe daily the lack of protection and care during new construction for trees in the city right-of-way. With the cooperation of developers and education of our residents, we can turn this around with the proposed changes that celebrate each tree to protect and save during construction. The changes are not burdensome. Better tree protection serves to educate the public as well. In short, our urban landscape is an important asset. As DMI and the city forge a partnership for a vital, economically healthy community, let's protect the mature trees that create a unique sense of place and a reminder of how valuable they are to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next registrant is Bill Connors of Main Street, representing Smart Growth Greater Madison, to be followed by Paul Quinn, to be followed by Jonathan Cooper. Bill?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening about the Street Tree Protection Ordinance. Smart Growth Greater Madison understands and appreciates the value of street trees, particularly mature street trees, and the strong desire to protect them during adjacent construction projects. In addition, we appreciate the several small changes that have been made to the proposed ordinance and the section regarding tree protection in the standard specifications for public works projects, which were made in response to Smart Growth's concerns. But we have concerns that have not yet been addressed. First, there is a different, better way to increase protection for street trees. The better time to have talked about this would have been before the ordinance was introduced. But unfortunately, the sponsors of this ordinance chose not to engage with stakeholders to try to find the best solution to this issue. If a homeowner kills their neighbor's tree, the neighbor can recover damages from the bad homeowner under existing tort law. The engineering division could include in each development agreement a liquidated damages amount based on existing tort law if any street tree that was supposed to be preserved is damaged or killed during construction. And that tort law recovery amount would be considerably more than anything that's in this ordinance right now. The development agreement also could require the developer to provide a letter of credit for 125% of the liquidated damages amount, because development agreements already require a letter of credit for 125% of the anticipated cost of repairing damage done to the right-of-way during a construction project. So that's the kind of the alternative better way. But Smart Growth's other requests are incredibly small. First, the city forester has repeatedly said that what he will not do if a contractor or subcontractor's employee damages or kills a street tree. What he won't do is jump immediately to revoking the street tree or right-of-way permits. But what the city forester says he will do is not anywhere in the proposed ordinance, and it's not in the current Madison general ordinances. We ask that the ordinance say what the city forester says he is going to do, to have the ordinance say that in writing. Second, the current Madison general ordinances, under the current Madison general ordinances, if city staff revoke a construction project, street and/or right-of-way permits, the developer can appeal to the Board of Public Works. But there are no written standards for the Board of Public Works to consider when deciding the appeal. Not in the proposed ordinance and not in the current MGO. So we ask those
3 minutes. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. We ask that those standards be added.
That is, in
Thank you.
fact, your 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Our next registrant is Paul Quinn of District 4, to be followed by Jonathan Cooper. Paul?
Good evening. My name is Paul Quinn. I'm a member of Capital Neighborhoods Incorporated, the downtown omnibus group for the 6 downtown neighborhood groups, and I'm also a member of the Tree Protection and Preservation subcommittee of that group. But I'm speaking for myself and not from any position. I don't think I have to argue that we need as many trees in the city as we can possibly get. And it should be obvious to any of you that have lived there for any length of time that there are less of them now and there are fewer every year. The ordinance that is proposed simply puts teeth into penalties that are already on the books. It provides a disincentive for developers to casually damage and destroy trees because there's no penalty, significant penalty, if they do. And they do that. So this puts teeth into it. And it's not, to be clear, we're talking about our trees, the street trees. These aren't private trees. They're destroying our trees. And we want to stop them, and that's what this ordinance will do. It's not extreme. The penalties are like $500. The one that the developers are worried about is the revocation of the street tree right-of-way permit, so that they would not be able to continue their project if it transgressed that particular right-of-way. And that's certainly a possibility, but it's so remote. It's the forestry department is not adversarial to developers. They want housing as much as we do. They just don't want them to destroy our trees, which is what they are doing. So I urge you to support this change in the ordinance to make it meaningful. If you don't, the developers will continue to damage and destroy trees as they have been doing. I probably walk around downtown more than anybody else I know. And every day I pass construction sites that are obviously in violation of the existing tree ordinance, where the implements and machinery is casually leaning against trees, where the orange flexible barriers have been knocked down. We need a change. We need to put some teeth in the law, and this ordinance change will do it. You should support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last registrant wishing to speak on this item is Jonathan Cooper of District 4. Do we have Jonathan?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Rhodes Conway, and good evening, council members. I have been a downtown resident for 25 years, and during that time, I've been involved in many neighborhood steering committee discussions and spoken at many city commission meetings on development proposals for downtown Madison. One of the focal points of these discussions has been the protection of existing trees in the public right-of-way adjacent to a proposed construction site. While recognizing that some trees simply cannot be saved when a property is redeveloped, it is important to protect and maintain healthy street trees whenever and wherever that is possible, particularly those large trees that contribute to the existing tree canopy. The changes in the Madison General Ordinances before you tonight are not in any way intended to limit development in Madison, and they shouldn't if adopted. Rather, they are aimed at raising the status of street trees in discussions on development proposals with the hope that these trees will be given serious consideration when new construction is being planned, and that the city's forestry staff are made a part of those discussions sooner rather than later. More than once, I've been on the sidewalk with the alder, the development team, the construction crew, and city staff members while crew members and construction equipment idled, trying to sort out the status of a street tree that had not been an issue during the planning and approval process for the project, but was now seen as a problem. It has often been decided that the tree in question could be saved without impacting the project, but only through the extraordinary intervention of those of us hoping to avert the removal of that tree. The ordinance changes being proposed tonight are intended to eliminate the need for such ad hoc meetings and the delays they cause. You will hear concerns expressed tonight that the permit revocation aspects of the new ordinance language, which is intended only as a last-ditch effort to gain compliance with tree protection and replacement issues, are not adequately defined by existing language in the ordinance being amended tonight. This matter has been considered by both Plan Commission and the Board of Public Works, both of whom were satisfied that such existing language does in fact suffice, and I hope that city staff is successful tonight in explaining to you why that is the case. The enhanced tree protection zones being proposed are meant to help ensure that protection of trees in the public right-of-way at a construction site is taken seriously, and that the city's ability to enforce the provisions of agreed-to tree protections can be enhanced, all without inhibiting the ability of a developer to propose and complete a construction project. I would ask you to support the ordinance changes being proposed tonight that are simply intended to help the city and its residents better protect and maintain the existing street trees that contribute to the environment that makes Madison the special place to live, work, and visit that it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is our last registrant wishing to speak. Are there questions for any of the registrants on this item? Seeing none, then thank you all for your commentary, and we will go on then to item 33, which is the item we have just been talking about, Legistar 89254, a substitute amending sections of the Madison General Ordinances to enhance the city's street tree protection provisions and to establish a street tree replacement fund. On item 33, President Vitiver?
Move to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt item 33. Are there questions for staff on item 33? Alder Okovich.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is a question for the city arborist or one of the attorneys, but it was my understanding early on in the process that the reason that the permit revocation was included in the ordinance is because there are limits in state statutes that limit how much we can recover for a tree being damaged or destroyed. And I'm wondering if that's accurate and if you could expand on that.
Ian Brown, City Forester. Alder, you're accurate. So we as the city are only able to legally recover our cost. And so passing along price advantage city cost. We're purchasing trees at volume. We're doing things at volume with our staff too. I would like to think that our staff are quite efficient at what we do. And so in a penalty circumstance like that, we're actually not really able to recover the cost of the community of having our staff do recovery work as opposed to the other core services that we should otherwise be doing.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Field?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question that I think is for one of the attorneys, and if we have Attorney Visti, we had email correspondence earlier. Otherwise, perhaps Attorney House could help. So my question is about an idea that came in from some of the public comment about an alternative way to offer an incentive for developers to proactively protect trees by engaging in a contract that included a clause for liquidated damages instead of doing this by a permit. And I'm wondering if staff could explain to the alders what the difference is between those two approaches and why staff are proposing to take one approach, the permit route, instead of the other.
Can I take it back first or tell me?
I have Doran's email.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the forester is going to attempt an answer for you, Alder.
This is ACA Visti, had responded to that concern. So first of all, it should be noted that a liquidated damage clause is a contractual clause between parties as a way to monetize damages due to contractual non-performance without having to go to court. A permit, which these protections are tied to, is not a contract. If a developer does not comply with a permit, they can be cited for non-compliance, or the permit can be revoked or suspended. Thus, adding some sort of liquidated damage provision into this ordinance that would make applicable to private contractors who may or may not be working under a contract with the city would not make a whole lot of sense and is not something we would generally do.
Does that answer your question, Alder?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, thank you. And so it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Alder Verveer?
Yep, thanks very much, Mayor. Well, let me begin by saying that in my estimation, this ordinance is a very big deal, and I really appreciate the very significant support that it's received from my colleagues. So thank you very much for that. I also appreciate everyone's patience as this has gone through the committee process and allowed for the development of a substitute ordinance. I'm glad that we were able to address many of the concerns raised by Smart Growth through the substitute ordinance. Obviously, we weren't able to achieve complete concurrence and earn their support tonight, which is unfortunate. I mentioned this in previous discussion at committees, but I wanted to say once again that if any of my colleagues have not dealt with the issue of a city tree being severely damaged or removed without city permission, then you're very fortunate. It has happened way too often downtown, and it is something that causes there to be strong emotions and really hard feelings among stakeholders when that happens. It has happened way too often. As you can appreciate with the significant development that we have enjoyed downtown over the years, especially through the creation of new housing, there are construction sites every other city block at times, tower construction cranes constantly, continuously on the downtown skyline. I, for one, think that overall that is extremely positive and very exciting. The downside, as you heard in the testimony tonight and you've heard in previous testimony, is a loss of our urban forest and tree canopy in many respects. Now, no reasonable person I know has suggested that the city regulate trees on private property and that we in any way are a hindrance to the creation of housing or other development because of existing trees on private property. But the reality is we've lost a significant amount of our tree canopy downtown just by the new development and private property. What this is all about tonight, as you know, is preserving our mature city-owned street trees, those in the public right-of-way, those that we conceivably have an ordinance and standard public works specifications that are meant to protect those same trees, but the reality is that is just not the case today. In the short several weeks since this ordinance was introduced and where we are tonight with consideration, I could tell you about some significant trees that have been damaged or lost due to downtown construction just in the last couple of months. For example, on North Broome Street, for example, on West Main Street. This is an issue that is continual. It's one that's very frustrating. It's one that our city forester and street superintendent and their colleagues think about and deal with day in and day out. They have tried to do what they can through reallocation of staff resources in forestry to try to address this issue. We have tried internally to get developers and general contractors and subcontractors' attention to realize how important this issue is to us, and it really has only had limited success. So tonight, I hope that we can send a strong voice, hopefully unanimously, in support of this ordinance. It's one that I believe is critically needed. It's one that shows that the city really does care about sustainability and the harsh realities of climate change. We just sincerely have to get the attention of the industry to realize that these trees are worth protecting. It happens just way too often that at the 11th hour, when a construction contractor is mobilizing on site, they then ask or sometimes don't ask and remove city trees. And we have to get their attention early and often. And I believe that that's what this ordinance will do, that it will support mature public trees adjacent to projects. It will in no way, shape, or form hinder the creation of needed new housing in our community. They are not mutually exclusive. We can preserve mature city street trees and continue to do all we are doing to foster and encourage more housing development in our community by virtue of other actions that were taken already at tonight's meeting. So again, I hope we can have a strong support tonight, and I sincerely want to thank our city forester, Ian Brown, street superintendent, Charlie Romines, assistant city attorney, Doran Visti, and others on staff that have worked hard on this for a very, very long time. This was a very thoughtful approach. I admit that we should have gone to the industry, to Bill and Smart Growth and others earlier rather than later. But I am pleased that we were able to address many of their concerns and accept many of their suggestions. I also, in closing, just want to thank you, Mayor, and all the other sponsors of this ordinance, and thank all of my neighbors, fellow downtown residents who not only tonight, but throughout the committee referral process have shown up, have testified, have tried to articulate why this is such an important issue for all of us. So thanks very much and urge your strong support. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovich.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to just echo a lot of what Alder Verveer said, and specifically I want to thank Forester Ian Brown, Attorney Visti, probably saying that wrong, and Charlie Romine for working with this and assuaging me of a lot of the issues and working on a lot of the changes. So I know it wasn't easy, so thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Uguer.
Thank you, Mayor. Just adding a couple of points as a member of the Board of Public Works and the testimony that was considered there, and noting the fact that it was at our suggestion that the final wording of the substitute be re-referred to the Board of Works so it could consider some of the things that we were concerned might be missing. First point I'd like to make is that we firmly concluded that one of the largest contributions of this amendment is that it will focus attention during the very early stages of evaluating what street tree conditions are. That most of the things that happen during the course of construction can be anticipated if the protection of the street trees or of various alternatives to problems with the street trees are considered very early in the process. We think this will do that, and that will solve many of the problems. When the penalties are not sufficiently severe, there's just a natural tendency to say, well, we'll deal with that later. We'll tell everybody, all of our subcontractors, that it's important, but we'll worry about the details because it always works out. If the attention is given to it early, the history of how forestry works with developers on identifying what the likely outcomes will be, the things that would be complicated for the construction process can be dealt with in advance. The other thing I would point out is that indeed one of the things that we had asked to see in the final language dealt with the expectation from the drafters that there would be additional comments on what the appeal process would be in those events where everyone was working in good faith, but there was just a problem that couldn't be anticipated and a tree was damaged. We were ultimately satisfied that indeed the existing language in the ordinance was adequate for the process, that when we looked at whether there should be standards or not that had to be added, for the most part, they were going to be crystal clear. Either advantage was taken when the opportunity was there to properly work through things with the forester, or they were ignored, and we felt that as the judiciary body for the appeal, that we had sufficient standards to make a good decision and a fair decision should there be an appeal to the Board of Public Works on an action taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to discuss. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 33. That will take us to item 70, which is Legistar 89482, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Madison WT Associates, LLC, generally addressed as 53 West Town Mall in District 9. On item 70, note that the recommendation out of the Plan Commission is to adopt with conditions. President Vitteber.
Move to adopt with conditions.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt with conditions. On item 70, are there questions for staff? Alder Pritchett.
Yes, I was present at the Plan Commission meeting, hybrid forum, last night, and I noticed at that time that there was some hesitancy amongst two of the alders regarding the West Town project. But in addition to that, there are some things that I think need to be noted with respect to whether or not this project is allowed to proceed. First of all, I don't think we've given enough attention to the history that evolved from 2019, and that was the flooding that took place from West Town runoff.
Although I just want to make sure you're headed towards a question. Are there questions for staff on this item?
There are questions, yes.
So there'll be a time
Background
for
information, please. I would like to.
Okay, I'm just making sure you're headed towards a question. That's all.
I do have questions, yes.
Wonderful.
So the background information, once again, includes looking at or addressing what happened during 2019. The number of businesses that were lost as a result of that flooding. The number of businesses that took months to recoup or to regroup with their businesses. The second thing that I want to make note of, too, is the number of coffee shops that are within 400 meters and or 750 meters of this new development. So my question, once again, is this. Given that there are 4 coffee shops, one will be opening later on in October or the beginning of November. Given the traffic flow, the choke points, the traffic coming in and off of the Beltline, east and west, traffic on Gammon trying to get onto the Beltline, east and west, what provisions will be made by the project going forward? How and when or where will these things be addressed?
Thank you, Alder. I think maybe we'll start with our planning director to just address Alder's question in the context of what's before us and what options are available to the council tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So just to start, the project that's in front of you did include 2 recommendations that were considered by the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission considered both the review of a conditional use approval for the actual coffee shop itself and a review of all of the related standards for approval of that use. The Plan Commission also reviewed the CSM, which is the term for the division of the land to create the lot for the coffee shop to be created on. After the Plan Commission's review and approval of the conditional use, it also considered the CSM and forwarded only the CSM on to the Common Council for consideration and for a recommendation of approval. So the only piece of this project that's in front of the Common Council this evening is whether or not to approve the division of land to create the coffee shop on. I will note that while the project gets reviewed by the Plan Commission concurrently for both of those reviews, only the CSM is here tonight, and many of the questions that are presented by the Alder this evening are really related to the conditional use process itself, which is not in front of the council tonight. I will note, though, that in regards to flooding, in addition to just reviewing the general standards for site layout and et cetera that the Plan Commission looked at as part of the CU, we also have separate ordinances related to stormwater management that projects are required to meet. And in regards to any traffic impacts from the project that the Plan Commission reviewed under the conditional use, the city's transportation engineering team reviewed this project and provided comments related to that traffic impact. So again, just the whether or not to approve the division of the land to create the lot for the coffee shop to be built on is the question in front of the council. Ultimately, the question of the density of coffee shops is not a question that was in front of the Plan Commission or the Common Council related to either the conditional use or the division of land. What we are looking at in this case is really whether or not the plan recommendations and the zoning standards would allow a coffee shop to be created in this location.
So follow-up question. Given that you're looking only at the land, are you saying then that you're not looking at what happens after or if it's developed?
What is happening on the land, if it's divided and if it's developed, is part of the conditional use review process, which is what the Plan Commission looked at last night. So they looked at the proposals specifically for the coffee shop and for what will be developed there. But ultimately, only the piece of the project related to whether or not to approve the land division has been forwarded for the council's action.
There are other questions for staff? Seeing none. And item 70 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing no Alder, go ahead. Alder Pritchett.
I do believe when we look at a project, regardless of whether or not we're just looking at the land or not, I think we have to have a little bit more foresight with respect to what happens afterwards, even if the land is perfect. But when we think about who are the users of it, the number of people who will be affected by it in terms of traffic flow, congestion, choke points, whether or not these owners have taken the time to look at do we really need another drive-through? If you took 5 minutes at the rush hour, I took time to stand there to look at the traffic flow coming from Westtown, coming from Gammon North, coming from the end of Odana, that's where it stops. Starbucks, Mocha, now on Odana at the old White House shops. Yemeni is will be opening up later on this month or early November. Those are choke points. The traffic flow, the lights. You have people going in all directions. The land is perfect, but what about the users of it? That's very important. It goes hand in hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Okovich?
Thank you, Mayor. I share some of the concerns that the Alder has about a drive-through in the TOD area, but I just want to make clear that city staff and the Plan Commission have looked at those items related to traffic and a lot of those other things as part of the conditional use process. But what's before us today is just approving a map that delineates the boundaries of the property and easements and other related items. It has nothing, we have delegated as the Common Council the authority to issue conditional use permits to Plan Commission, and the decision of Plan Commission is appealable, but it is not decidable by our body right now. And so that is what we're talking about right now, is really just the CSM and the limits of the, essentially a survey map. But, I agree that we shouldn't be putting driveways or drive-throughs into TOD, but we aren't allowed to decide that tonight.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Field?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, from this discussion last night, this was the third time since I've been in this role that the Plan Commission has struggled with a primarily auto-oriented use in the TOD, and I do mean struggled with it, as in each case we have considered an auto-oriented use at a relatively low density pattern in an area of the city that has a pretty flexible zoning district and future land use, but that flexibility also allows a lot of density and a lot of mixed uses in the future. And so it's a little disappointing to see a project quite this small in scope and primarily auto-oriented. But the staff report is what I want to direct folks to, because I think that the staff did a really excellent job in this at walking through each of the approval standards and the evidence presented by the applicant and visible at the site, and how that evidence relates to the approval standards, which is what we walk through. There is some pretty thoughtful consideration for the queuing of vehicles and driveway access, future street configurations. So I just wanted to put that out there for folks who want to read a little more about it. I appreciate the alder of the district sharing some of these sentiments, as I share some disappointment about this particular use here. And I think, we'll see as this area of the city grows nearby, and that may change the future use of this parcel also. I'm certainly hoping for that for each of the parts of the city where we've approved drive-throughs and auto-oriented uses in the TOD on main arteries, where we expect a lot of Madison neighbors to live someday. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. Without objection, I would just say that the question of what is allowed in TOD is something that we have been working on with staff to address some of the concerns that have been raised tonight. And so I would encourage alders to engage with staff on that question, and hopefully we will collectively be able to support a proposal coming forward in the not too distant future to address some of the concerns that have been raised tonight. All right, I have no other alders in the queue. It's been moved and seconded. Is there objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing Alder Pritchett, would you like to be recorded as voting no?
No. Record, no.
Yes, so we'll record Alder Pritchett as voting no. Is there further objection? Seeing none, we'll record that vote with Alder Pritchett being noted as a no vote. All right, that will take us then to item 78. Item 78 is Legistar 89347 and is authorizing execution of a sole source contract with Downtown Madison Incorporated for preparing a downtown economic investment strategy. This item is before us for reconsideration. So the first, just to orient us all to the process, the first vote we take is on whether or not to reconsider the item. If you all recall, this item was passed at our last council meeting, and there was a motion to reconsider, and was not noticed at that meeting, so it had to be noticed. It is now before us for the question of reconsideration. If the reconsideration vote fails, the vote from the previous meeting will stand, and we won't be talking about it. If the vote to reconsider is successful, then the item will be back before us as it was in the previous meeting. Seeing no questions on process, Alder Harrington McKinney, do you wish to make the motion?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion that this be approved for reconsideration, especially when...
Let me just pause you, Alder, there. And so the Alder makes a motion to reconsider. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Alder, would you wish to speak to the motion?
I would like to speak to the motion.
Go ahead.
Thank you. The reason that I asked for this to be reconsidered is that the entities involved, DMI, our staff, did a very thorough job in preparing to answer the question why this particular project moved forward as it did. And there was no opportunity for that discussion to be had. And those entities are here tonight, ready to explain why the sole source contract was awarded. And I think that it is information that would be helpful for those who might have questions or those who might not have questions. But it certainly moves forward with transparency and efficiency, and especially since those entities came prepared tonight to answer the question, why sole source contracting? And so I asked my colleagues to approve and let those presentations go forward.
Thank you, Alder. The motion before us is reconsideration. Is there further discussion on the move to reconsider? Alder Knox?
Could we ask questions of staff on this?
Only on the mechanics of reconsideration. The item is not yet before us, Alder.
Okay, then I'll wait.
All right, seeing no further discussion on the question of reconsideration, we'll move to a vote. So all those in favor of reconsideration and bringing the item back up for discussion, aye. Those opposed, to let the decision of the previous decision of the council stand, no. As your name is called, and the clerk will please call the roll.
Thank you. Alder Mayor. Alder Mayor, aye. Alder O'Brien.
Aye.
Alder O'Brien, aye. Alder Ohovich. No. Alder Ohovich, no. Alder Pritchett. Alder Pritchett, aye. Alder Tischler. No. Alder Tischler, no. Alder Revere. Aye. Alder Revere, aye. Alder Vitiver. Aye. Alder Vitiver, aye. Alder Duncan.
Aye.
Alder Duncan, aye. Alder Evers. Alder Evers, aye. Alder Field.
Aye.
Field, aye. Alder Figueroa Cole. No. Alder Figueroa Cole, no. Alder Glenn.
Aye.
Alder Glenn, aye. Alder Govindarajan.
No.
Alder Govindarajan, no. Alder Ugair. Aye. Alder Ugair, aye. Alder Harrington McKinney. Aye. Alder Harrington McKinney, aye. Alder Lankella. Aye. Alder Lankella, aye. Alder Knox.
Aye.
Alder Knox, aye. Alder Madison. Aye. Alder Madison, aye. Alder Martinez Rutherford. Aye. Alder Martinez Rutherford, aye. Alder Matthews.
Aye.
Alder Matthews, aye. We have 16 ayes, 4 noes.
Right, with 16 ayes, the matter is back before us. Because at the last meeting, this item was passed on the consent agenda, and we did not have the opportunity for public comment or questions of registrants, I would request or suggest to the body that with unanimous consent, we could allow questions for registrants before we do questions for staff, given that I feel like the intent of the maker of the motion was to be able to hear from registrants on this item. Is there any objection to that? Yes, certainly. We always have the opportunity for staff, but it's slightly unusual to allow us to go back and have questions for registrants. But seeing no objection to that, then what we will first do, and I apologize, I shut down my public comment, but I believe the relevant registrant in this case is the folks from Downtown Madison Incorporated, and Jason Ilstrup is here remotely. So Jason is the one that was registered as available to answer questions. So let's start there. Are there questions for Mr. Ilstrup from Downtown Madison Incorporated? Alder Harrington McKinney?
And so this is for clarification. At what point will he be able to make a presentation, or will this be just questions directed to him?
This will just be questions, but Alder, your question could be, Jason, could you please give us a short summary of this item?
Thank you for your guidance. Would you please give us a brief discussion of this item?
Nicely done.
Here, and you should be able to unmute yourself, Jason.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you all very much for taking up this very important matter, and thank you, Alder Harrington McKinney, for the question. I apologize for not being able to make it in person due to some unforeseeable family circumstances, but I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you for the question about why we are here today to discuss the Greater Downtown Economic Investment Strategy. For those that don't know, I'm Jason Ilstrup, president of Downtown Madison, Inc., and we are the organization leading this effort to look at the economic health and vitality of downtown. This has been a years-long project in the making. It originally came about from Downtown Madison Inc.'s own strategic visioning plan several years ago, 2 to 3 years ago, where we worked with the group MIG, the same group that we're working with here today, to really understand how could we, particularly on the private side, help look at the health and vitality of the downtown. And one of those ways was to create a strategy, an economic investment strategy for the downtown, particularly on the private side, to see what we could do. What are the catalytic projects we need to see happen? What's the ground floor mix need to be? How should we be working directly with our friends in the public side of things? What is the governance model? What's the financing model? How do we help with some of the large projects that are happening now, like the Lake Monona waterfront, like the top of state? And so our idea was to put together a private plan to make this happen, to help make recommendations, only recommendations, and put input into the city process. We brought this forward to the city of Madison probably about a year and a half ago with the mayor and several others, including Matt Wachter, Matt Miklajewski, and now Megan Tuttle, to see how we could coordinate and cooperate on this large initiative. This initiative that we're looking at now is being led by DMI. And in full transparency, this is about a $1 million project for us. We are raising $1 million. We're hoping that $150,000 of this is coming from the city, but the other parts are coming directly from private entities and some public entities, including the University of Wisconsin. We've raised a significant amount of this money. We're very thankful to be able to do this, to start this work, which we started in earnest just a few months ago. Before we got to that point, though, we worked with the city to say, how can we cooperate and coordinate in a more robust fashion? Truly, we wanted to create a progressive and new way to look at how we can create more economic vitality and health and vibrancy in the downtown. And we asked our consultants at MIG, what is a way to actually make that happen? And one of the best ways is to actually coordinate directly with the city of Madison in this work. So we looked at it two ways. One, it could potentially funding the project that we're doing, which is what we're talking about today, but also it was the timing of the land use plan, the downtown plan as it's known, which is now coming up later this year, and the work has just started and really happening in earnest in 2026. And so you see in Legistar, there is a graph about how these two programs are working together, but also in the same time in concert with the city's economic development division's strategic plan, but also UW's master land use plan, which they're starting work on now. To have all four of these plans coordinated and combined and together in so many different ways will create much more powerful documents for us to all have. I should be very clear. The document that we're creating is a private document that's going to make recommendations. We are certainly not the city. We cannot say what should happen or shouldn't happen, but we certainly want to make those recommendations to the city. But of course, we have access to different private information and business information that the public does not. And the public has information that we do not have. And to be able to combine that effort in data gathering and in information to help share that in the beginning of this project, and then to continue to come together as these two projects work in parallel with each other, and to create what we're calling big moves and catalytic projects and sharing information. We only think this is beneficial and will help create an economically strong, equitable, inclusive, and vibrant downtown Madison to live, work, and visit for everyone.
Thank you. Alder Harrington McKinney, any follow-up questions?
So Jason, this contract, who's the signer on this contract? You mentioned other entities that were coming together to make this happen. Who is the signer responsible for initiating and completing and making those decisions?
Yes, a great question. Thank you, Alder. The contract, the main contract, there are actually two contracts, but the main contract is with MIG. MIG is a national consulting firm, a leading consulting firm across the country, and one that we've worked with before. And that contract is entered in between DMI and MIG. There are subcontractors under MIG that include Neo Partners out of St. Paul, Minnesota, Vanderwall and Associates out of here in Madison. And they will be working in the coordination, but underneath the subcontractor status of the full contractor MIG. But we are only signing the contract with MIG. We are also signing a separate contract with Equity by Design and the team at Annette Miller. One of the things that we want to do is make sure we have significant public outreach for this document, to hear from everyone and anyone we can, to help combine the process with the land use plan, which the city does excellent work in getting out residents of the area and the whole region to have their input in this plan. But we wanted to double that effort with our own excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. We wanted to double that effort with Equity by Design, also helping lead that effort. So there'll be a second contract also between DMI and Equity by Design for the public outreach section of our work on the greater economic investment strategy.
But to be clear, then there is also a contract between the city and DMI for the funds.
That is correct. If this funding goes through, there would be a contract between the two entities and the contract that we are working through right now. That is correct, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Revere, questions?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for being with us, Jason. I know that you actually welcomed this reconsideration so that you could, in the spirit of transparency and openness, discuss this not only with us, but the community that's listening now. I know, Jason, that you're aware of the handful of residents that have expressed concerns with this sole source contract through written testimony to us. I could ask you, and I'm prepared to ask you to respond to some of their specific criticisms. Would you like to address any of those concerns at the top here? Or would you like me to just jump in and ask you a couple of questions about those concerns that have been shared by these individuals?
Yeah, thank you, Alder. Maybe we'll do both. I would say first, to your first point, actually, in transparency, I actually very much welcome this opportunity to have a public discussion about this funding, but we also welcome any opportunity and any time to have transparency with the program that we are running, right, with the Greater Downtown Economic Investment Strategy. Yes, we are a private entity. There's no question about that. We are a nonprofit. We have our 501c3, 4, and 6. But we certainly want to be very transparent with this process because the process of the Greater Downtown Economic Investment Strategy will be so much more robust with public input. And we want to be transparent. In fact, we will show the contracts to anyone. We will help however we can. But when it comes to actual specifics of the conversations that are happening between constituents and the council, certainly would welcome your questions, how I can answer them specifically, Alder.
Yeah, thank you very much. So many of the concerns actually have been addressed in your opening testimony, but one area of concern that's been raised with us, and obviously we'll hear from city staff momentarily, who are heading up the other planning processes here in City Hall, namely the downtown plan that you mentioned in our planning division. But one of the concerns that's been raised is that the focus of this $150,000 sole source contract work for the economic strategy will be the core downtown area. That is the area that is a central business district and will actually not include to the same level of interest, especially stakeholder and public participation, other neighborhoods outside of the core downtown. Specifically, what have been mentioned are other neighborhoods on the Isthmus, Bay Creek. As you know, the downtown plan, proposed downtown plan boundaries are different from DMI's traditional area focus and your boundaries and the focus of the economic strategy. So could you just talk broadly about the different boundaries and why you don't think that, I presume why you don't think that will be an issue and that we will be able to collaborate and cooperate despite these, boundaries that are kind of inherent in the work?
Yes, Alder, absolutely. This is a really interesting question about the definition of downtown. It's one that we as an organization, and I'm sure you as the city, are constantly asking, where is downtown? And I believe, there's 275,000 residents in Madison. There's probably 275,000 different definitions of what downtown is. When it comes to the purposes of this work, the main focus of the work will dovetail very closely with the area that the city's downtown plan is using. That basically runs lake to lake and then park to Blair. But because the economic impact in downtown is farther than that, and in fact, the definition that DMI uses for downtown is the Yahara on the east side and basically Camp Randall cutting down to about Olin, Lakeside on the south side, and of course the lakes covering the rest. That's the area that we look at. We couldn't go that far into it because the plans that the city are using, your new area plan structure, just would have gone too far. And it would have encompassed too much of the near east and near west plans, which are coming in the future. And so but we still wanted to look at areas that were closer to that border of Blair and Park. And we want to engage with some of the communities in parts of those areas. A really good example is the burgeoning Cap East section of downtown, right? Something even 10 years ago, there wasn't as much business. But there is significant new businesses, development that's happening in and around that area. There always has been an extremely strong business district on Willie Street and of course on Johnson Street as well. So our intent is to have the main focus in the center of downtown, but also look at some of the issues in the near east and near west section. So that includes that Cap East section of downtown in the Tenney, Lapham, and Marquette neighborhoods. We are already engaged with CNI, and the CNI president is part of our steering committee, but we would want to engage also, we will engage with Marquette and the Tenney Lapham neighborhoods, but also importantly with the newly created business associations, which DMI happens to help administer. They run themselves the Cap East Business Association, which covers basically Butler to the Yahara, but a very thin Mifflin, East Mifflin to East Main. And then also the newly created WUMBA, which is the Williamson Marquette Business Alliance. Again, a group led by that team, Chip Cruz and the team at Weary Traveler and Rotunda Cafe. But we also help administer, so we have very tight relationships with them. Now, in the case of WUMBA, they actually have direct representation of the Marquette Neighborhood Association. So it is absolutely our intent to engage many stakeholders in that area as we begin the work in those areas. When it comes to the western side, excuse me, I about 30 days into this cough, and it's got to be coming at the end here at some point, is particularly on the Regent Street and the university side of things. As many of the council members know, DMI has been involved in both the Regent Street group for about 10 years now, and now the newly formed Regent Street Business Association. So we have great, strong ties with the neighbor, and those Regent Street groups include the neighborhood associations, the alders, including you, Alder Verveer, and several other alders, many city staff, many of the large and small stakeholders. So we feel very well tied in with the team at Regent, but of course the university, and they are a part of the steering committees as well through many of their different divisions, including the Chancellor's Office, Community Development Division, the City Tourist Site and the teams at Building and Planning. So we have great connections. We want to engage as many folks as we can on those neighboring downtown centered district areas to cover some of that area. But again, the majority of the work will happen between Blair and Park Street, bounded by both Lake Mendota and Lake Monona.
Yeah, thank you very much. Why don't I just give you your voice a rest, and we can move to city staff questions here momentarily. But let me just revisit where I started, and that's transparency. Can you share with us again from your perspective, and we'll ask the same of our staff, but how the DMI-driven economic strategy work will be very much in the public realm. For example, to the point that I know we're still figuring out the exact date later this year, but that the downtown plan kickoff and the economic strategy kickoff would be one in the same. Is it your intent, and can you kind of promise that all of those, there won't be a lot of, how do I say this, behind closed doors meetings that, some would say are going to be funded by city tax dollars relating to the economic strategy will ever happen? In other words, this will all be out in the open and the sunshine, and that just as the downtown plan will be developed that way, so too will the economic strategy.
Yes, absolutely. I think two ways to look at this. Three ways to look at it. Again, as I said before, we want to be as transparent as possible, and we will do anything we can to be as transparent as possible. We will share the documents, get those into Legistar, get those into the community however we can. Second, and the point that you're making is, yes, we just had a project leadership team a few days ago, actually. Our MIG was in town, a series of consultants were in town, and we had a project leadership team meeting with several leaders in the city. And we all agreed, both the leaders in the city and us on the private side, that we wanted to host a series of meetings. I think it's either 4 or 5, I don't have the exact information in front of me, to host public meetings where both the city is going to give their updates on the downtown plan, the land use plan, and at the same time, MIG and DMI will give updates on the greater downtown economic investment strategy. That'll, one, allow for updates, but two, of course, allow for input on the work that we're doing. Again, as I said before, this is going to be so much richer of a plan if we have significant community outreach and input into this work. The third point is to that same point, is we are spending significant resources on our side. This is the private side with those resources, spending them with our friends at Equity by Design to do significant outreach. But of course, MIG, Vanderwall, and DMI will also be doing significant outreach aside from just those public meetings. So you asked for a guarantee that those meetings will be public and that DMI will give updates and make sure that we are hearing from the community. I can absolutely guarantee that that will happen.
Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Viniver.
Hi, Jason, and thanks for being here, especially if you're getting over something. And just thanks for all that you do for downtown and for the city as a whole. So my question is really about the money. So you talked about that this was going to be $1 million project, and that the city's piece would be $150,000. So can you talk both about what sort of the city's money buys and why it needs to be city money? If you can raise $150,000, why can't you raise $1 million?
Yeah, great question. So the total overall scope of this project, which I said before, is $1 million. And the vast majority of that funding is going to the consultants. So the contract with MIG is about $400,000. We don't quite know the exact contract details of the contract with Equity by Design, because we're coming up with that right now, but we assume it'll be about $100,000. That's where the funding the funding that the city is giving will be for, and that is expressly for those purposes. There is also some funding in there for the hiring of a staff member, but that is handled only on our side, on the private side, for a new director of placemaking and economic development, position that has been hired. Excuse me, and I think Alder Bidever, you've met her before, Emily DeVore, who's been with us almost a year's time. She'll be managing this project, has been managing projects, will manage this project, and will also happen to work with other placemaking organizations. One of the unique parts of this plan is that she's a 50% employee of DMI and a 50% employee of Destination Madison. I just happened to attend last week the annual conference of the International Downtown Association, association for groups like ours that work on downtowns. And from what we can tell, it's a very unique model that we're creating it that way. But that funding that we needed to create was to back it up for 3 years, because admittedly DMI didn't have the reserves to be able to fund that project. That's a project, a position that's going to be in perpetuity. But it's our goal is to have the seed funding to get that to happen. And we've already increased our funding over the first year of that project to make sure that that position is there in perpetuity. There are some other ancillary costs, of course, legal and other things like that we need to be doing through accounting to make sure that this work is handling transparency. So that's why the budget gets to just short of $1 million. But the city's funding, to answer your question, will be going to, and with our money, to the consultants at MIG for their work.
And Jason, one of the questions that's been asked of us from a transparency perspective is, why are we contracting with you, DMI, to subcontract to these other entities and not doing an open bid and seeing who might come to the table, understanding that some of the entities that you're subcontracting with might come to the table. Can you just talk a little bit about why that was seen as the most effective mechanism?
Yeah, certainly I think that's a two-part question, right? One for us as an organization, but also for the city of Madison. So I certainly will defer part of the answer to our friends. I think Matt Wachter, Matt Mikolajewski, and Megan Tuttle will be answering the questions from the city side. Great question. For us, I think there's power in the larger group of doing this work. And I think that by growing the budget to $1 million, it's easier for both the private side to be able to raise that sort of funding and have the city be a part of that funding. I think we're all going to get more if we are able to have the private side sort of lead the effort. Again, we want to be as transparent as possible, but have the private side lead this effort. It provides resources that just would not have been there before, both financially to make this project happen, but also the resources that we need in data collection and information and working with the different stakeholders that are a large part of downtown. That does include the property owners, includes the businesses, includes the Business Improvement District and Greater State Street Business Association and all the other ones that I mentioned. And I think by having DMI run the actual plan itself, it allows for more ability to get more resources into this and will then, as I said before, create a more rich document to be able to use to plan our downtown for the future.
Okay, so I think I'm struggling a little bit because I'm still sort of trying to understand. It sounds like what you're saying is that the city's investment will help to ensure that the level of private investment that you're seeking is attained. Am I hearing that correctly?
That is correct. Yes, I would say the fact that, let me say it another way. To our funders, to know that the city is invested in this is quite key to our fundraising ask. And so it really works in parallel, right? Because we believe we were going to receive this $150,000 funding. Of course, nothing is guaranteed, but we're able to tell those funders that the city is bought into this plan and that they're going to work forward on this plan. It opened up more ability to raise more funds. And I think there's real power in that. Back to this conversations I was having at the IDA conference this last week, we believe we're one of the only cities in America that are doing this sort of progressive work by coordinating, combining the efforts of the land use plan, the city's plan, and the downtown greater economic investment strategy, our plan. By having the city's $150,000, it helps leverage the fact that the city is really a part of this, right? There is actual money in this project, and it's helping unlock other capital. I'll admit and say, if we don't receive this $150,000, we'll either have to try to raise that funding, which I think will become increasingly difficult, and or we'd have to scale back the project.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Alder Madison.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question, Jason. I believe you said that you all are still working on your subcontracting agreement with Equity by Design. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Alder Madison. We're working on that now. In fact, we should have that contract very soon from them, and then we're hoping to have that approved by our board of directors probably in our November set of meetings. But we're working directly with Annette Miller and the team to finalize that now.
Gotcha. And then when you say earlier in your comments, you were saying, I guess I'm looking for, how do you define the community that Equity by Design will be sort of engaging with or reaching out to? What are the various communities that you envision they'll be reaching out to?
Yeah, that's a great question. We don't have the exact scope of that document. I will say this, Alder, we will get you and all the alders a copy once we have that scope of work. And so, excuse me. I don't think I've coughed all day except for right now, so I apologize the 100th time. We don't know the exact scope of that work, but we are starting to understand it. It will be both a two-pronged approach, looking at sort of stakeholders that are already involved in the downtown, these groups that we already know of, but it really importantly is to reach out to groups that haven't been a part of the downtown and their voices are not heard. We have something called the Central Cities Committee, the CCC, that is going to help lead this effort of groups that haven't traditionally been a part of this decision making, but absolutely have to. I mean, as our board of director member and chief diversity officer at CUNY Mutual, Angela Russell, says, we need soulful places and soulful spaces for every soul in our city, in the downtown. And the only way to get that is to get input directly from members of all communities. And we're very excited to have Annette Miller and the team at Equity by Design, Jasmia, and the folks there to help lead this effort to make sure we're getting as much input as possible. But I will tell you hope to be as transparent as possible. Once we have that contract, I will send that to the city so you guys have a copy of that. Put that in the public record. You know exactly what that scope is once those details are complete.
So speaking of the scope is where I think most of my interest is at. I guess I would like to be able to at minimum preview or review the scope document before it's finalized. Not that I don't believe Equity by Design will be able to reach multiple communities, but I'm interested in what are their target communities, because oftentimes when I see results just in general from consultants, sometimes there are groups of communities who don't ever seem to be reached. These may be folks who are zero income, no income, under $75,000. And oftentimes the results, from some reports I've read from various consultants, often tend to lean on folks who are part of fraternities and sororities, or they're very well educated. And we're oftentimes missing folks, for example, who live in a lot of our lower income affordable housing complexes, for example. So I'm really just interested in seeing the scope, the communities that the group will be reaching out to, just to ensure, because we all engage with downtown. Everybody in the city, for some part, engages with the downtown at some point. But I want to see certain folks be part of the conversation and how they do or don't engage in downtown and why. So if
absolutely.
I guess
I'm sorry.
One last thing I was going to say is that, so yes, I would love to be able to see the scope document before it's finalized or need some edits or whatever, and you've already signed it, it becomes difficult to go backwards. So I would love to see that. And then if you wouldn't mind keeping council up to date, whether it's, hey, there's a committee meeting coming up for folks can kind of get an update, just some general updates as you all are working, because I'm nerdy enough to tap into those.
No, absolutely, Alder. And thank you for this really great point. I will 100% send you and any of your colleagues that are interested in seeing the draft version before it becomes finalized of the scope. And because we want as many folks to be part of this process as possible. And you all, the 20 different alders, have such great networks that we would love to tie into. And that gets to your second point. I would love to give updates, to get you information and where we are in this process. Whatever the best mechanism to do that is, I will absolutely do that. If that means coming to the council every quarter, whatever the mechanism is, I am happy and actually would like to do that, because there's going to be times we might be calling on you all for assistance to get voices that we might not have had heard, or we need updates on this or that, or something we don't even know that could happen yet. So having you all tied into this process will only make it better.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. If no other alders in the queue with questions for the registrant. So thank you, Jason. Feel better?
Thank you all very much. I really do appreciate the support for downtown, and thank you, Mayor, for allowing me to take part in this conversation. Really appreciate it.
All right, we'll move on then to questions for staff. Alder Knox.
Yeah. Is Matt here, or who is here?
We have multiple Matts and a Megan.
Okay. Well, I just had a question about the in the justification for sole source. So who can respond to that?
Go ahead, and I think Matt Mikolajewski will respond.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And I certainly understand why DMI would be a good fit to sole source. I look at the sentence that says the city could not replicate the level of private sector support for this planning effort by contracting with different organizations or consulting firms. So, Matt, can you just tell me, was there any consideration of other possible firms? I mean, I don't know, like maybe the Greater Madison Chamber or the Convention Bureau. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Sure. Happy to, Alder. So Downtown Madison Inc., as I think most everyone knows, is the principal business organization that represents the downtown. And their membership is largely made up of the major downtown property owners and some smaller downtown property owners as well. And so while there are certainly other business organizations in the community, they are the entity that can likely bring to bear the greatest number of those property owners into this conversation that are really critical for especially the implementation of the planning work that comes out of DMI's effort and also the city's downtown plan. And that was really, I think, a key point that Mr. Ilstrup helped to illustrate, is that to successfully implement the downtown plan, generally speaking, across both the city and the private sector, we need both work of the city and also work of the private sector. And DMI is really the organization best capable of bringing together that private sector piece of that implementation.
Yep. I just wanted you to elaborate on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. This question is also for Director Mikolajewski. This came by way of a constituent. I'm curious that this would be paid out of TID 50, but it would cover a realm almost 2 miles away from that if it's truly to cover all the way to the Ohio River. Can you speak to the appropriateness of that or precedent?
Yes, thank you, Alder. One can spend TIF dollars either within the boundary of a TID district or within a half mile of the TID district. As noted, the city portion of this project is less than half of the cost of the contract that DMI will have with MIG. And so as a result, we feel confident that there's enough of the area being planned within the boundary of TID 50 and a half mile of TID 50 that the use of $150,000 of city funds out of that TID is appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. Could someone potentially speak to, right, so we are putting $150,000 into this. But as it was stated by Jason Ilstrop, this is $1 million project that DMI is already planning on doing. So could someone maybe speak to, I guess, that as why we couldn't spend $150,000 anywhere else and get what is going to come out of this project, because the project costs $1 million. Is that kind of how the economic development planning looked at this?
Yes, Alder, that's a great question. Yes, I mean, this is a way for the city to invest in this broader initiative, and we'll receive a lot through that investment, and it will in particular help with forming our own downtown area plan. But that is absolutely correct. We could not replicate the work and the information that we're going to receive for $150,000 by just doing it on our own or consulting with our own consultant for $150,000.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Revere?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'll let any of our esteemed staff answer the questions as they desire. So I just wanted to follow up on some of the areas that I probed with DMI President Ilstrup. So the first one is concern about transparency. As you know from some of the written testimony that we've received, there is a concern about a lack of transparency through this sole source contract, but particularly in terms of the deliverables and how those will be derived. Would any of you be help us alleviate any concerns that there might be about a lack of transparency and conflict of interest and that sort of thing with the investment of these public monies with DMI?
Sure, I'll start, and anyone else feel free to jump in.
Thank you, Director Wachter.
I think early on it became clear that one of our major goals was to make sure we had a shared understanding of what was happening in downtown. So that's pulling the same data, having them get the same data, being at the same public engagement. So we're all hearing the same thing to understand what's happening. But a lot of that is GIS files and maps and just getting that information. And both sides will have, I think, pretty full access to all of that data. And then the next step was to have somewhat of a shared vision as to where downtown is going. But after that, if you look at the graphic, these things do split apart and they become separate processes with separate plans. And we'll be following our really normal process for developing the actual city recommendations, the future land use map, everything that goes into the plan. And they'll go off on their own and have guidance on how they're going to govern themselves and implement and do things. So once we get, I think, past that basic data stage, it is very much our normal planning process. And Megan, if you want to correct anything I said.
No, I don't think I'll correct anything, but just maybe add a couple of things. One of the important tools for us in working on this contract with DMI for the work that they will help lead was to identify that shared coordination and those shared deliverables that Director Wachter just spoke about. So one of the items that is attached to the contract actually details every item within the scope of work for DMI and their consultant MIG, and identifies that the deliverables for almost every one of those tasks will actually be shared with the city. I think that was an important thing for us as we were talking with DMI about making sure that we have access to the data and information and analyses that are informing the work that they will be doing, and then also the work that they're doing would be shared with us. As Matt said, we also then want to make sure that we're coordinated and using the same sort of baseline understandings. But we also know that the work that DMI will be doing goes into a greater level of detail in many cases than what we might do. And so we wanted those deliverables also to come back to the city to benefit our planning work and make that area planning work more robust as well. And then similarly, As Matt said, we will continue to develop the downtown area plan. The ultimate recommendations of DMI's economic investment strategy, we see as being a complement that will really help us dig into the details. For example, in an area plan, when we identify a site that might be appropriate for a future land use change or for redevelopment, we're generally looking at a high level, what type of uses, at what intensity, maybe what building heights. But we see the opportunity for this work that DMI will also lead to dig into the details of, so who will do that and how will they do that in order to make that vision more successful. So we see the sharing of these deliverables to inform the work we're doing, and some of that work happening in collaboration with each other, making sure that we're on the same page and making sure that we're communicating the same things about downtown.
And I would just add, from a transparency standpoint, I think it's really important to reinforce the fact that as a private organization, if DMI did not have this contract with the city, they would not be obligated to share information with us, even though, they've certainly said it's their intent to be transparent. But by contracting with the city, they'll be contractually obligated to share the results of the information that they gather and the work product that MIG pulls together. So in some respects, it actually increases, I think, the level of transparency by contracting with them to help with this work.
Thank you all for your respective responses. The other area that I just wanted to get a response about, as Jason already responded, was a concern that we received. Again, these are in writing since no one's chosen to testify in person on this matter beyond Jason tonight, is the issue of perhaps certain neighborhoods within the various study areas receiving more attention than others. And in particular, there was a writer who resides in the Marquette neighborhood expressing concern, whether it be her neighborhood or other neighborhoods that are outside the boundaries of the downtown area plan, led by the planning division versus DMI's economic strategy and their wider area focus between Camp Randall Stadium and the Yahara River. Would any of you please speak to that concern as to the fact that the boundaries are different and that those that are outside the boundary of the downtown area plan would still be receiving benefits from this sole source contract that we have before us now?
I can speak to part of that, Alder, and if either of the others want to weigh in, I welcome that. I think the first thing that I'll just note is that while the sort of core of the Greater Madison economic investment strategy is the sort of downtown as we define it for the area plan, we do recognize that their geography is broader, in part, as we understand it, because they want to make sure that we are appropriately considering the different influences on downtown, connections to downtown, connections from downtown, economic drivers that influence what happens downtown, and how everything sort of works together. So from an economics perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense to take a more holistic view and think about the interconnected nature of a lot of those influences, as well as the systems, transportation systems, et cetera, that influence how people access downtown. As we think about the coordination between the economic investment strategy and the downtown plan, those are the work that will be happening obviously most concurrent with one another. But as this economic investment strategy concludes and there are recommendations, again, not city policies that are adopted, but recommendations about the future of this greater downtown area, we can certainly come back to those as well in future area planning initiatives. We have on our radar, as you may remember from making recent changes to the schedule for the area plans, we will be looking at the near west area, which is covered in part by some of the greater downtown area that DMI has identified, beginning late next year and working into 27, and then the near east to follow that in 28. So both of those planning processes will be coming soon after the downtown plan as well, for us to think about the relationship.
Thank you very much, Director Tuttle. And then just lastly, so that we hear confirmation from you, could you just speak to the fact, to avoid confusion with our constituents, that the downtown area plan, again led by your team internally, and then the DMI-led economic strategy will have joint kickoff meetings, joint public meetings moving forward. And obviously we can refer to that chart again that has evolved over the last few months. That's attached to this item in our Legistar program.
Yes, that is something that we are actively working on right now, is to refine the details of how all of that coordination happens. But as Director Ilstrup said, it is our intent that the main kickoff and many of the major milestones through the drafting of the plan and their recommendations happen concurrent with one another, and that we're both present and participants in those meetings. I will say that we anticipate that there will be additional engagements that will happen in addition to that by each of the organizations. The city often attends neighborhood organizations, schools, pop-up events, other kinds of discussions in the community to talk about the planning effort. And we want to be coordinated on the kinds of things that we're talking about when each of us are pursuing our additional engagement work outside of the major things we do together. But it is that intent that we have those major milestones and discussions as the plan process progresses together.
Thank you very much, Megan. And thank you, Matt and Matt. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Vidover?
I think this is a question for Director Miklajewski. I just want to make sure I understand, if this is using TIF funding, then it has to meet the but-for process, that this could not go forward but for city funding?
Thank you, Alder. That's not entirely accurate. The but-for finding is required for development loans. However, under state TIF law, a community is able to use TIF for other items that don't require the but-for test, including contracts such as this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I have no other Alders in the queue with questions. So thank you to staff for answering questions. President Vidover, a motion on item 78, please.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt item 78. Is there discussion? Alder Harrington McKinney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have had a very robust discussion of shared deliverables, the scope of this investment, and this item was passed on the consent agenda without thorough, expansive discussions that we have heard tonight. We talk about transparency, but when we look at the scope of the questions that we have heard tonight, understanding sole source contracting and DMI's involvement in pulling all of these entities together. The reason that I pulled this was not because I did not believe in the transparency and the benefit of the city of Madison of having this contract. I really wanted to call attention to our use of the consent agenda. That's why I pulled it, because this item moved forward on the consent agenda. We have spent the last half an hour really discussing in depth, not just for us, but also for constituents who had the question of the integrity of this document just passing forward. And so I would really ask my colleagues is that when we see items on the consent agenda, that we really look at the scope of what that means and the questions that they that are not being answered. And so that was the reason that I pulled it. And so please, as we place things on the consent agenda, always think of transparency and the opportunity for us to ask questions, but also our constituents to get answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to begin by appreciating Alder McKinney and her remarks and her rationale for reconsideration of this item. I want to share, as I think I did in the preamble of my questions of DMI President Jason Ilstrup, that he welcomed the opportunity tonight to discuss this publicly. And it wasn't just in response to the very small number of concerned civic activists that reached out to us kind of during and after, in the aftermath of our last vote on this particular resolution. But I think from DMI's perspective, and I'm sure from the perspective of our staff tonight, and all of us, that it was important to take this opportunity to discuss these plans and this investment, again, in the open. I frankly was not surprised when this was adopted both on the Finance Committee and Common Council's respective consent agendas. I think in part because Economic Division Director Miklojewski did a good job drafting the resolution and the sole source contract rationale, but also I think because each and every one of us knows and values the tremendous role that DMI has in our community, and we know and respect and trust that organization. I think all of us do, but I absolutely will say that I appreciate the concerns by some in our community that they've raised. They were valid concerns. I hope that their questions and everyone's questions have been now pretty much asked and answered in this regard. And again, I appreciate Alder McKinney for wanting to bring this out in the open and sunshine. Let me just say that this is something that we have envisioned working with DMI on going back at least to 2023. I remember working with Director Miklojewski on a capital budget amendment to our 2024 capital budget to invest in this work by DMI because we thought it would be a tremendous value to us. And I want to appreciate you, Mayor, for realizing that we really need to collaborate and cooperate closely. And it just didn't make any sense to have a downtown area plan start sometime in the new year, next year, most likely latter half of next year, but have DMI have this separate downtown economic investment strategy taking place this year. And so I want to publicly give you the credit for bringing all parties together and realizing that we really need to not duplicate our resources. And for all the reasons that were said tonight in response to our questions, that this investment of our $150,000 at this time and the collaboration and cooperation of these two planning initiatives makes all the sense in the world. And I hope my colleagues will support it again tonight as you all did previously on the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. We have no other alders in the queue wishing to speak. The motion is to adopt. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of adoption? Seeing no objection, that item will be adopted. And that brings us then to the end of our agenda. Are there any announcements or additional introductions of items from the floor? Seeing none. Alder Mayor, it's your turn.
I move adjournment.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objection, we stand adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.